We'll be going over 10 crazy bits of unused content in Poppy Playtime so far before the release of Chapter 4, ranging from unused objects to even some unused rooms. Now before we get started, I'd like to proudly announce that I've officially partnered with GamerSupps. GamerSupps offers various absolutely delicious flavors of their sugar-free, low-calorie, no-filler GG energy formula to give you a boost at work, the gym, or when gaming. And if you don't want or can't have caffeine, they also offer pretty much all of their flavors in a caffeine-free option as well. And in addition to gamer soups, tea, and a bunch of merch, they also have what they call AFK, which is a melatonin-free mix that can help you get a better sleep. And to celebrate the start of this partnership, for the next 48 hours, Tetra will get you free shipping on everything on their site anywhere in the world, including their free samples. So you can try some out for absolutely free and see what you think. And if you need some suggestions, Copium and Good are probably my favorite flavors so far. And with all of that said, let's check out some of Poppy Playtime's best bits of unused content so far. Number 1. Starting things off here, we have a hidden lemon tucked away out of bounds in the school area. It's located just behind a window and hidden behind this prop, just waiting to be discovered. Now, you might be wondering why I think this lemon is so interesting. Well, it turns out that this is actually a running joke by the game's developers, and this lemon isn't just sitting there, it actually talks. When interacted with, it says, "Limon!" Now the lemon lore gets even deeper, as there's also a secret death screen tied to this lemon back in Chapter 1. If you interact with the lemon repeatedly, it triggers a special sound effect titled Limon Death. Limon. And after getting bamboozled, the death screen simply displays the words Limon, Limon. And yeah, in Chapter 3, the lemon makes a return as a little hidden secret for players who explore areas they're typically not meant to reach. It's a fun little detail that adds a touch of humor to those who discover it. Hopefully, the developers will keep including these hidden lemons in future chapters. Number 2. So there's this cool secret area located just out of bounds in the Playhouse map in Chapter 3. To find this area, you need to go to this wall in the pool room, and just behind it, we can find the entrance to the scrapped ride section, where the plan was for the player to ride these duck boat things. Coolest part, this duck boat is actually fully functional too. Just interact with the boat and you'll get sucked into it and phase through the first barrier here, and then the duck ride will slowly move you through the area, and you'll need to pull some levers to open some gates, or should I say this one lever, since the next one turns out to be impossible to grab onto. No matter where you look here, some invisible barriers above will prevent you from grabbing onto anything, making it impossible to complete the full ride. Now there are a few theories on how this part could have been used, most of them revolving around two things. First, that it could have been a scrapped segment for escaping Dog Day, as his jail section is close by. And then the other main theory is that this would have been another area where the mini smiling critters would chase you around, and it would have been kind of like a shooting gallery, where you would have to be aware of your surroundings and shoot at the smiling critters with flares, all while making sure to open the gates. Now, had this ride been fully functional and implemented, it seems like it would have ended up on this beach, where after going through a shipwreck, you would find your way to the prison section, where normally here you see Dog Day. Another interesting detail is that if you enable seeing triggers in the game, you will actually see red arrows pointing the opposite direction of this shipwreck. Now, usually these arrows indicate the direction which the player should be taking, but in this case, based on the direction that this ride takes, I don't think the arrow here is correct. Number 3. In the main foyer of Playtime Company in Chapter 1, there are two posters going down each of the two side hallways. And if we look what's below them, just under the floor, we can actually find some hidden creepy pictures of different people with their faces scribbled out. Now, it's unclear who exactly these people were supposed to be, but I assume they may have been meant to be some staff members working at the facility, but who knows? It also seems like these pictures were generated using thispersondoesnotexist.com, a site which generates a face of a person that, you guessed it, doesn't actually exist, which is honestly pretty dang unsettling. Now for number 4, let's start with looking at some concept sketches. Here we have 2 concept sketches of the main Playcare concourse area made by Sunny Lee, a concept artist that helped out with Chapter 3 here. Now these drawings show off Playcare in both a lit up daytime version as well as with the lights off. And although the sketch looks pretty similar to what we can see in the final game, there's one detail that immediately caught my attention. And it's that we can see the toy store in its original, cleaner state. In one of my previous videos, I mentioned how the toy store was originally meant to actually be explored by the player in this chapter, and how ultimately the idea was scrapped. Then there's also this part of the sketch that shows a painting of the area that somebody was working on. What's interesting about this painting though is the big red circle around the left side of the toy store. Although it's unclear what it was meant to be, I think it could have been a hint for the player to find something there. Now for number 5, unused items related to the orange flare shooting hand remain left over in the game. These include an unused ammo crate, small ammo, and although there's no leftover model for it, a small ammo box. Now these unused assets suggest that the flare gun hand was originally designed to have limited ammo rather than the current used system where it reloads automatically after a cooldown. Players would have needed to find either individual flare shells scattered around the area or larger quantities stored in those ammo crates. And interestingly, one of these ammo crates is still present in the early version of the Catnap boss fight map, where it appears that it would have been constantly refilled by a pipe. Considering how necessary these flares are in the playhouse area for fending off the smiling critters, and how later in the chapter they can be used as a light source or to detect fake catnaps during the final fight, I think it makes sense why the developers switched to an unlimited ammo system so the players wouldn't be left ammoless. Additionally, the texture on the unused ammo crate gives more context about the flares themselves. The 40 on the texture seems to indicate the number of rounds per box, while the rest of the text here seems to suggest that although these seem to have been modeled to look like 12-gauge shotgun shells, these were actually intended to be 50 caliber linked armor-piercing incendiary rounds. Now, of course, the flares in this chapter don't seem to have any armor-piercing capability, so it's likely the developers created this texture based on real military ammunition boxes. Still, it's interesting to speculate that in addition to making toys and running an orphanage, Playtime Company might also have dabbled in ammunition manufacturing. Number 6. In Chapter 2, there's a lot of unused videos hidden in the game's files. The first video, labeled as New Green Hand Demo, is one of these. Despite having new in its name mentioned twice, it appears to be an early version of a tutorial video for the Green Hand. The video shows a scrapped feature of the Green Hand, a timer that's visible on it, and it would count down for the 10-second limit of holding power. The warning to use the Green Hand with caution is also way different in this early video, as the consequences of reckless use is shown to be more, well, graphic. Number 7, school puzzles in Chapter 3. Next up, we have 6 unused placeholder hint textures that were meant for the school area in the 3rd chapter. These hints appear to represent 6 different school subjects: art, math, science, reading, spelling, and more science. Now it looks like these hint at a scrapped idea for 6 puzzles to be scattered throughout the school, which the player would have had to solve in order to progress, with a few of these puzzles also seemingly offering a choice of either going left or right. The art puzzle appears to have involved mixing colors, and interestingly, these just so happen to be the 3 colors of the right grab pack hands that you use in this chapter. The math puzzle seems to have had the player solving some sort of code. This next one is much more philosophical, implementing the age-old question of which came first, the chicken or the egg. And then, some of the other puzzles are a bit harder to interpret. For example, I have no idea how the planet or blue and red squares puzzles could have played out. And although the planet puzzle wasn't implemented, it does seem like a few models related to it still ended up being used in the game. I think it would have been great to see more puzzles like this in the chapter instead of just the power puzzles or battery ones. However, it's quite possible that the developers felt that these scrapped puzzles might have slowed the game's pace a bit too much, and they chose to scrap them in favor of keeping the school area focused on battery puzzles leading up to the final encounter with Miss Delight. Number 8. Multiplayer mode left over in Chapter 2. Leftover files in Chapter 2 reveal a partially scrapped multiplayer mode with assets and features similar to Dead by Daylight. Based on leftovers in the game, the mode appeared to have involved one player controlling a monster such as Huggy Wuggy or Mommy Longlegs, while the other players would take on the role of colorful Playtime Company characters seen in the in-game training videos. And left over in Chapter 2 were actually models of these playable characters in orange, green, yellow, blue, and red. Now, if this idea sounds familiar, it should, as this idea was eventually turned into the Project Playtime multiplayer spin-off that plays pretty much exactly how it was outlined back in the Chapter 2 leftovers. And although hand gesture emotes did make their way into Project Playtime, there's one that never got added. This unused gesture left over in Chapter 2 was meant to have been activated by pressing the F and U keys simultaneously, and yeah. And in addition to all of that, left over in Chapter 2 were also various character animations, some death screens designed for the multiplayer mode, and more. It's cool that we eventually did see this content repurposed, albeit kind of abandoned nowadays. It was extra cool to find this stuff left over in Chapter 2 before all that. Number 9. Originally, the Huggy image was left unused way back in Chapter 1. But with the release of Chapter 3, we saw the developers remake and reuse this for the Hallucination Huggy VHS tape in the Nightmare section of Home Sweet Home. When placed side by side, we can certainly see some differences, but this was definitely inspired by this old, unused, creepy image. Now, according to an ex-developer, the Huggy image was actually made when they were rigging up the model of Huggy Wuggy for Chapter 1, and it was actually apparently just the result of deforming the mesh a bit and turning down the gamma levels. And I think this original Huggy image is probably one of my favorite bits of unused content from the series. Number 10, the early Chapter 2 beta found in the game. Just how it sounds, when Chapter 2 first launched, left over in the files was straight up just an unfinished early build of the game. This beta version of Poppy Playtime Chapter 2 contains significant differences from the final release, revealing various early development details. One of the major differences was textures, as this early version has a lot of untextured assets, or some using placeholder ones, like just using some plain white doors instead of more stylized ones. Additionally, this early version lacks many props throughout the chapter, one of them actually being Elliot's desk in his office. Then another thing missing in this early version are various animations. One example of this is Bunzo Bunny lacking any animations in the Simon Says section of the chapter, and then another good example is Mommy Longlegs' death animation being incomplete to say the least, and honestly pretty funny to watch. Then, in addition to those, other major differences between the early and final cut include Poppy's dialogue being quite a bit different, making her sound much less antagonistic. PJ Pugapillar appeared bloodied in the early version. Poppy phases into existence instead of emerging from a box, and then some interactions, like Poppy appearing in some vents, don't appear to be in this early version either. This early beta version of this chapter gives us a really cool glimpse into Poppy Playtime Chapter 2's development, highlighting significant revisions made to the chapter before release. And my friends, that's about it for this list. I'll be playing through and probably making videos on Chapter 4 in the near future after this is uploaded, so be sure to stay tuned and subscribe to find your way back here in the future. And as always, thank you all so much for stopping by today, and I will see you in a bit.